What if the person you look down on the most turns out to be the one who holds your fate in a single nod? Have you ever wondered, how many times in life have we judged someone at first glance? A simple dress, an old, worn-out watch, and we hastily conclude that they don't belong in our world. Today, I want to tell you a story that unfolds aboard the first-class cabin of Aurelius Airways, the most luxurious airline, where every ticket is like a key unlocking the gates to the world of the elite. Everything seemed perfect. Premium Italian leather seats, rare Burgundy wine is poured into sparkling crystal glasses. Powerful handshakes and smiles heavy with status and privilege. And then she walked in. Isabella Laurent, a woman dressed in an elegant yet modest emerald green dress, her eyes carrying a proud fire forged from years of being underestimated. On her wrist, no dazzling diamonds, but a classic Cartier watch, the only reminder she needed that a person's worth isn't defined by appearances. At that very moment, the cabin fell silent, as if swallowing her whole. The gazes from fellow passengers, the disdainful glances from the chief flight attendant, Vanessa Sterling, all of them were like invisible blades cutting into Isabella's dignity. Does she really belong here? Or is she just a lost soul, wandering into a world of hollow glitz and glamour? But what they didn't know, what they could never have imagined, was that the truth was about to shatter their arrogant shell in a way no one could have foreseen. Before we go any further, let me ask you something. Have you ever been looked down upon just because of your appearance? Comment below right now, because this story might just make you see the world through a very different lens. And let me advise you, do not take your eyes off the screen. What's about to unfold will not only surprise you, but will leave you pondering long after the story comes to an end. Inside the lavish first-class cabin of Aurelius Airways, everything seemed meticulously staged for a grand performance of luxury and power. The Italian leather seats felt as smooth as velvet. Baccarat crystal glasses sparkled under the warm amber lighting, and the rich, inviting aroma of Burgundy wine seemed to softly beckon the elite passengers to indulge in their exclusive privileges. Every gesture, every glance, even the simple act of lifting a glass, radiated the smug confidence of those who believed they belonged at the very pinnacle of society. Amidst this setting, Isabella Laurent stepped in. There was no ostentation, no air of arrogance, yet every gaze was inevitably drawn to her. The emerald green dress she wore, though modest, accentuated her natural elegance. Her hair, loosely tied with a few gentle strands falling freely, only further highlighted her refined and proud beauty. On her wrist, a classic Cartier watch, no sparkling diamonds, but a vessel of countless memories, quietly whispering a story unknown to anyone in this first-class cabin. No one saw the long, grueling days Isabella had spent as a flight attendant, with endless nights of tension and smiles that never faded, even as exhaustion and pressure weighed heavily inside her. No one recognized her as the woman who once saved the life of a passenger suffering a stroke on an international flight, acting with swift intuition and experience honed through thousands of hours in the sky. A courageous act that had been publicly praised by the airline itself. And yet, in this moment, ironically, not a single soul here remembered. Isabella had been the woman behind the flawless journeys of countless flights, the guardian of safety and comfort for hundreds of passengers. But today, she stepped into first class, not as a stewardess, but as a true passenger, as the woman by the side of the most powerful man in the aviation industry, Leonard Laurent. Yet those scrutinizing eyes, those sneering smiles, and the sideways glances dripping with prejudice seemed to dismiss all of that. Who is she? A stranger who somehow slipped into this world of the elite? Or perhaps a story we have yet to understand? Isabella felt it all. But instead of lowering her head, she held it higher. Her steps were slow yet steady, as if each one was grounded on the very foundation of her deepest dignity and self-respect. At that moment, she recalled Leonardo's words when he had gifted her the Cartier watch on their first anniversary. Time is the most precious gift. Not money, not status, but the time we spend with those we love and how we use it to prove our true worth. Today, surrounded by looks of disdain, Isabella allowed herself a gentle smile. A smile not aimed at them, but as a quiet reminder to herself that she had nothing to prove to anyone in this first-class cabin, because her worth had never been measured by the eyes of others. Just a little longer, Isabella thought to herself, and the truth will come to light, rendering these stairs powerless. The sunlight, streaming through the airplane window, glinted softly off her watch, reflecting a glow that was subtle yet proud. And in that moment, she knew, even if the whole world looked at her with doubt, she would still hold her head high. Isabella Laurent was not just a wife. She was living proof that dignity needs no audience, for it is, in itself, the brightest light of all. Just as Isabella was about to settle into seat 3A, a sharp, cutting voice sliced through the elegant silence of the first-class cabin. "Ma'am, I believe you may have taken the wrong seat. This section is reserved for first-class passengers." The voice belonged to Vanessa Sterling, the chief flight attendant. Her golden hair was neatly pinned up, and her uniform was pressed so crisply it seemed to reflect the cabin's soft lighting. On her flawless face was a look of suspicion, poorly concealed beneath a mask of forced politeness, tinged with barely hidden contempt. Vanessa's gaze swept over Isabella from head to toe, as if inspecting a defective item that had somehow found its way into a luxury boutique. Other passengers began to take notice. A young businessman, previously engrossed in scrolling through his gold-plated phone, looked up, his eyes flickering with a mixture of surprise and mockery. "Perhaps there's been an error in the system," Vanessa said, icily, carefully taking the ticket from Isabella's hand as though afraid it might soil her perfectly manicured nails. She held the ticket up to the light, flipping it over deliberately, making sure everyone around could see the gesture brimming with unspoken accusation. "This usually happens when economy passengers try to upgrade using counterfeit tickets," Vanessa sneered, a thin, frosty smile curling at her lips. A light chuckle escaped from a couple nearby, dressed in matching designer outfits. The husband scoffed. "Seems like first class has become awfully easy to mistake these days." The atmosphere in the cabin shifted swiftly from curiosity to an oppressive cloud of public humiliation. Every glance felt like a sharpened blade piercing straight into Isabella. Her heartbeat thundered in her chest, but she showed no trace of unease. Her fingers lightly brushed the surface of her Cartier watch, as if to steady her breath amidst the storm. "This ticket is valid," Isabella replied calmly, her voice soft, yet as firm as the velvet-wrapped steel. "My husband personally reserved this seat for me." Vanessa arched an eyebrow, the mockery dripping from her next words. "Your husband?" She emphasized the word husband, making sure everyone savored the sarcasm in her tone. "Is he the CEO of this airline, perhaps?" The cabin erupted in cold laughter, the cruel sound echoing like sharp needles pricking at Isabella's dignity. But Isabella did not flinch. Her eyes calmly swept across the crowd, as though she already knew, in just a few moments, every smug smile would freeze in place. Vanessa lowered her voice, yet spoke loud enough for all to hear. Unless you can verify your identity, I'm afraid we'll have to ask you to leave the first-class cabin. At her signal, an airline security officer approached. Though his expression held a trace of reluctance and even sympathy for Isabella, it was clear he dared not defy his superior's orders. The air grew thick and heavy. The glances, the sneers, the scornful stares, they all pressed down like an unbearable weight upon the shoulders of the woman standing alone in the aisle. And yet, with astonishing composure, Isabella offered a slight, knowing smile. No protests, no panic. She met Vanessa's gaze directly and whispered, just loud enough for her to hear, "Are you certain about this decision?" A flicker of doubt crossed Vanessa's eyes, but it was already too late. In mere seconds, the cabin door would open, and their entire world would be turned upside down. A soft knock on the cabin door sounded like a bell toll, signaling a twist of fate about to unfold. The airplane door swung open, and in stepped a man whose commanding presence seemed to fill every inch of the cabin. Leonardo Laurent. Even the cabin lights seemed to follow his silhouette. His navy blue suit, impeccably tailored, traced every line of his broad shoulders and carried an aura of calm authority, yet exuded an undeniable, invisible pressure. His salt and pepper hair was perfectly combed back, and his deep, piercing eyes, sharp as blades, forged in the ruthless fires of countless boardroom battles. Leonardo didn't need to say a word. His very presence alone was enough to shift the atmosphere of the entire first-class cabin in an instant. Vanessa Sterling, still clutching Isabella's ticket in her hand, instinctively took a small step back. Her eyes widened as she realized the man standing before her was no ordinary passenger. Leonardo strode confidently into the center of the cabin, his gaze sweeping across every face with composed dominance before it softened the moment it landed on Isabella. The warmth in his eyes for her stood in stark contrast to the cold sharpness he held for everyone else. "Isabella, are you all right?" His voice, deep and resonant, carried a weight that made the entire cabin hold its breath. Isabella gave a slight nod, saying nothing more. That simple nod was enough for Leonardo to understand everything that had transpired. He turned to Vanessa, whose face had drained of color. Her voice stumbled awkwardly. "Mr. Laurent, we were just following security procedures." Leonardo raised his hand ever so slightly, his gesture neither rushed nor hesitant. Yet it carried the force of an absolute command. Security procedures? Or was it the procedure of prejudice and humiliating a passenger? His words rang out, cold and razor-sharp, sharper than any formal accusation. The entire first-class cabin fell into a deafening silence. Passengers who had mocked Isabella moments earlier now lowered their eyes, unable to meet the gaze of the airline magnate. Leonardo calmly retrieved the ticket from Vanessa's trembling hand, glanced at it with disinterest, then raised his eyes to meet hers, eyes that seemed to see straight through her carefully crafted facade. "This is the ticket I personally booked for my wife, Isabella Laurent, the lady of this airline." The atmosphere exploded in stunned silence. The sneers from moments ago melted away into visible embarrassment and regret etched on every face. Vanessa quivered, desperately grasping for a final shred of defense. I didn't know. Mr. Laurent, I'm so sorry." Leonardo cut her off, his voice even but sharp as a blade. "You didn't know. But you should have known how to treat every passenger with respect, especially the woman you so hastily judged by her appearance alone." Turning back to Isabella, his eyes now filled with respect and love, he asked, "Would you like her to remain on this flight, Isabella?" Isabella gently shook her head. For her, the insult Vanessa had hurled didn't deserve pettiness in return, but rather the higher ground of graceful forgiveness. Leonardo offered a faint smile, then turned to Vanessa one final time. Very well, you will finish this flight. But remember, your next flight will be straight to the HR office. With that, he gently took Isabella's hand and guided her to her seat. The entire cabin watched in silence, their gazes transformed, from disdain to admiration, from prejudice to deep respect. Ladies and gentlemen, please relax. Tonight's dinner service will be personally overseen by me, Leonardo announced with composure, adding with a hint of humor, and of course, all drinks on this flight are on the house. A round of applause erupted, this time genuine, as if to atone for the misjudgments of moments before. But for Isabella, the greatest reward wasn't their regret. It was the warmth of Leonardo's hand in hers, and the undeniable truth that no matter how the world chose to see her, in the eyes of this man, she would always be his most priceless treasure. The atmosphere in the first-class cabin had transformed completely. From eyes of scorn, now every gaze was filled with respect, and more than a few carried quiet regret. No one dared to look Isabella in the eye anymore, but this time it wasn't out of disdain. It was shame, born from their own misguided prejudice. Leonardo Laurent, still composed yet commanding, gently pulled out the seat for Isabella. He personally checked her seatbelt, a simple gesture, but one that sent shockwaves through the cabin. The most powerful man in the aviation industry, the very man they all hoped to merely catch a glimpse of in their lifetime, was now caring for his wife with the utmost reverence. "Isabella, would you like a little wine?" Leonardo asked, his deep voice rich with affection. Isabella gave a slight nod, a gentle smile gracing her lips. It was not a smug smile, but the quiet smile of a woman who had weathered storms, yet stood tall, with her dignity intact. Vanessa Sterling and the other flight attendants were visibly flustered now. Vanessa fumbled with the menu in her hands, unable to meet the gaze of either Isabella or Leonardo. Beads of sweat trickled down her temple, as if every contemptuous word she had spoken earlier now hung above her like an impending sentence. Leonardo turned to Vanessa, and though his gaze had softened from icy sharpness, it carried the weight of deep disappointment. "I once believed my airline was a place where every passenger was treated with respect, no matter how they dressed or who they appeared to be," he began quietly. "It seems I've overestimated the impartiality of some." His voice wasn't loud, but each word resonated deeply, echoing in the minds of everyone present. No one dared to breathe too loudly, as though they were witnessing a court of justice where fairness was being restored in the most righteous way. Leonardo continued, his eyes sweeping across the entire cabin. "Today's flight is a lesson, not just for you, Vanessa, but for everyone here. Remember, it's not an expensive ticket or luxurious attire that defines a person's worth. It's their character, their kindness, and their humanity that is the true first-class ticket." The cabin fell silent, utterly still. Then, as if to ease the tension lingering in the air, Leonardo turned to the passengers and smiled warmly. "And to make sure no one forgets this lesson, starting today, Aurelius Airways will launch the First Class of Kindness program, where any kind-hearted passenger, no matter where they're seated, will have the chance to experience first-class service." Applause erupted, this time genuine and heartfelt. Even those who had once scorned Isabella joined in, as if publicly atoning for their earlier misjudgments. Isabella gently squeezed Leonardo's hand. At that moment, no words were needed. Her eyes, deep and radiant, said it all. Gratitude, pride and unwavering faith in her husband, a man who was not just her pillar of strength, but her lifelong companion. Leonardo responded with an even firmer squeeze of her hand, his gaze toward her overflowing with love and pride. "You didn't win today because you're the wife of Leonardo Laurent," he whispered, only for her ears. "You won because you are Isabella Laurent, a proud, strong woman, deserving of every ounce of respect in this world." Isabella smiled, her eyes glowing with a serene light, as though every storm had passed, making way for a new chapter, brighter than ever before. The sky outside the window had begun to glow with the colors of sunset. Brilliant hues of amber and gold filtered through the layers of clouds, pouring into the cabin like a magical blessing from the universe itself, as if celebrating the stunning reversal of fate that had just unfolded. Isabella quietly gazed at the breathtaking view, her heart swelling with indescribable emotion. Through the years, she had learned to walk past suspicious eyes, to rise above prejudice and define her own worth. But it was in this very moment, as admiring eyes turned toward her, that she fully grasped the true meaning of inner pride. Leonardo gently squeezed her hand, his voice tender, yet brimming with sincerity. "You know, Isabella, I once believed I had everything, power, status, and wealth. But I've come to realize the thing I treasure most is you, the woman who held on to her dignity even when the whole world turned its back." Isabella smiled softly, her eyes shimmering with emotion. "I don't need the world to recognize me, Leonardo," she replied. "As long as I have you, I have the entire universe." Her words reached deep into Leonardo's heart. His eyes softened, gleaming with boundless pride and love. He gently touched the Cartier watch on her wrist, the watch that had accompanied Isabella through every trial and triumph. "This is not just a watch, Isabella," he said. "It's a reminder that the time we share together is the most precious gift of all. And I promise you, from this moment on, I will devote every second to protecting your smile and making sure that our days together are the best they can be." Isabella gave a quiet nod, her eyes glistening with tears of joy. A single tear slid down her cheek, sparkling like a jewel in the golden glow of dusk. The atmosphere in the cabin felt completely renewed. Those who had once mocked her now, without prompting, rose to their feet and offered heartfelt applause. It was not fear of power that moved them, but genuine admiration for the couple's strength and unwavering love. Even Vanessa, her eyes red with emotion, could no longer conceal her respect. She bowed deeply, her voice choked with remorse. "Mrs. Laurent, Mr. Laurent, I am truly sorry for my blind prejudice. Today, I've learned the most valuable lesson of my career." Isabella responded with a gentle, forgiving smile. "It's not about the mistakes we make, but how we choose to correct them. Let today's lesson guide you to treat every passenger with fairness in the journeys to come." Leonardo followed his wife's words with his own deep, warm voice. "Remember this, Vanessa. Respect does not depend on status or appearance. Respect is something every human being deserves." The plane glided smoothly past the final layer of clouds, entering the clear, open sky, bathed in the brilliance of sunset. It was as if the scene itself had been painted to perfectly conclude the emotional climax of their story. In the first-class cabin of Aurelius Airways that day, there were no longer ordinary passengers or elite travelers. They were all witnesses to a profound lesson in character, love, and compassion. "Are we ready for our next chapter?" Leonardo whispered, his eyes filled with hope as he looked at Isabella. "More than ever," Isabella replied, her smile outshining even the sunset outside. And the plane continued its journey, carrying not just its passengers, but also an unforgettable story, a message soaring far beyond any flight path. The flight of Aurelius Airways had gradually settled into smooth cruising altitude. The last light of day bathed the silver wings in a golden glow, as if gilded by the sun itself. Inside the first-class cabin, the atmosphere had transformed, no longer tense, but filled with a quiet, almost magical stillness. Everyone aboard could feel it. They had just witnessed something far more extraordinary than any flight before. Leonardo Laurent rose from his seat and walked to the front of the cabin, not as a mere passenger, nor simply as the head of a global empire, but as a man determined to deliver a message that transcended the boundaries of first class. The intercom crackled to life, and Leonardo's deep, confident voice filled the cabin. Ladies and gentlemen, today I speak to you not as the founder of the Aurelius Group. I speak to you as a fellow human being, someone who has witnessed cold-hearted judgment, but also witnessed a powerful awakening. The entire cabin fell silent. Every passenger paused, their full attention on his words. Leonardo paused for a moment, his gaze softening as it found Isabella seated behind him, filled with a tenderness never before seen. The woman seated there is not merely my wife. She is a symbol of courage, a living proof that dignity is never measured by appearance or social standing. He turned back to the cabin, his voice growing even steadier, filled with conviction. We live in a world too quick to judge by first impressions. But today, I urge us all to do better, to look deeper, to listen more, and to let kindness be our guide. Applause began, at first scattered, then swelling into a warm, resounding wave throughout the cabin. Faces brightened, and many passengers wiped away tears, moved by the sincerity of his words. Leonardo wasn't finished. His eyes blazed with resolve as he continued. Starting tomorrow, Aurelius Airways will launch the Flight of Humanity initiative, a program to carry this story to every flight, to every passenger. We will honor not those with the highest status, but those with the noblest hearts. Applause erupted once more, louder, stronger. In the eyes of the passengers, there was no longer arrogance or judgment, only deep respect for the man and woman who had just reshaped their view of the world. Vanessa Sterling, humbled and tearful, bowed deeply before Leonardo and Isabella, her voice trembling with emotion. Thank you, sir and madam, for this invaluable lesson. I promise to carry this with me for the rest of my career. Isabella stood, stepped forward, and gently replied with words that silenced the entire cabin with their profound grace. We all make mistakes. What defines us is how we choose to correct them, and what we learn from the wounds they leave behind. At that moment, the cabin became more than just a space for first-class passengers. It had transformed into a chamber where kindness, compassion, and humanity were celebrated above all luxury. Leonardo glanced around the cabin, his eyes filled with pride as they settled on Isabella. Are you ready for our new journey, Isabella? She smiled, her smile brighter than the sunset outside the window. More than ever, Leonardo. Today, we're not just flying across the sky, we're soaring beyond the limits of prejudice, opening new horizons for everyone. A third round of applause burst forth, seemingly endless. Every gaze turned toward them, filled with admiration and gratitude. A touching story had come to its close, yet a new, even brighter chapter was just beginning. The flight continued its journey through the sky, ablaze with the colors of sunset. But for everyone on board that day, they had traveled far beyond mere physical distance. They had embarked on a profound journey of thought and emotion. As the plane touched down at Charles de Gaulle Airport, Paris welcomed them with gentle rays of sunlight draping over its timeless rooftops. First class was no longer just a place reserved for the proud and privileged, but a cradle where profound lessons of humanity had taken root. Leonardo and Isabella stood by the exit, greeting each passenger with warm, genuine smiles. No one passed by without offering a word of thanks or a glance filled with deep appreciation. Handshakes were firmer, well-wishes more sincere, like beautiful blossoms blooming from soil that had once seemed barren with cold prejudice. Vanessa Sterling, who had made the first bitter mistake, was the last to leave the cabin. She paused in front of Isabella, her eyes brimming with gratitude and heartfelt emotion. "Mrs. Laurent, thank you for teaching me that kindness and compassion are the most precious first-class tickets anyone can ever carry." Isabella answered gently, "Spread this lesson, Vanessa, not only on every flight, but in every moment of your life." Leonardo nodded, his eyes glowing with deep pride. "We cannot change the past, but we can write a new future." As the couple stepped off the plane, reporters and onlookers at the airport erupted in admiration. But this time, the flashing cameras were not just focused on Leonardo Laurent, the founder of an aviation empire. They were just as captivated by Isabella Laurent, the woman who had compelled the world to reevaluate the true worth of a human being. At a brief press conference right there in the terminal, Leonardo spoke, his voice powerful yet filled with emotion. "Today is not just the day we landed in Paris. Today is the day prejudice landed and made way for understanding and respect. I hope this story spreads to every corner of the world so that everyone, from the servers to the leaders, will understand. Dignity is something no one has the right to take away." Isabella followed her husband's words with a profound statement that brought the audience to a hush. "And if you ever feel underestimated, misunderstood, or looked down upon, remember this: the pride and character within you will always light your way, even in the darkest of worlds." Thunderous applause filled the terminal, and tears flowed freely from those who had witnessed their story. Your video's audience will surely feel the same powerful wave of emotion, leaving them with renewed hope and deep inspiration. And as night fell over Paris, Leonardo and Isabella, hand in hand, walked out of the airport. No need for extravagant escorts, no need for the glare of media lights. They were simply two humble yet extraordinary souls, carrying in their hearts a timeless message. There is nothing more precious than dignity, and no success greater than being true to oneself. The Cartier watch on Isabella's wrist caught the city lights, sparkling like a gentle reminder. Time passes, but the true worth of a person will forever endure. "The real journey is only just beginning," Leonardo whispered in Isabella's ear. "And we'll write it together," Isabella replied, her smile shining brightly beneath the Parisian stars. Have you ever been judged wrongly? Comment now. Your story could be an inspiration to someone else. Yes.